Andrew had always heard about meditation. He was just learning about psychic abilities and mediumship and healing. But he had a sense of what felt right to him. And that sense of what feels right was starting to ring true for him in his practices. It was comforting, but his progress was not in the areas he thought it would be. And most surprising was his ability to start to engage in and discover the true nature of his empathic powers. See, he had always been a little bit different, a little strange. He was an introvert, and he had always had a sense about people and what was going on with them. And as he started to ground himself in these practices, he started to realize he had absolute control, even though he hadn't realized it yet, in his ability to control and understand and discern the energies that oftentimes had left him stuck in his past. As Andrew was smiling, he wrote in his journal, "Do or do not, there is no try." And I'm using my Yoda cup today in honor of that quote, because that is indeed the process. Our mind, in its instinct to survive, tries to do a lot of stuff. Our mind, in its awareness and knowing, actually does the things we imagine possible with the right practice and the proper mindset. More about Andrew in just a moment. Welcome to Spirit360 Fellowship. We are an online community of like minds and kindred spirits. We are a group of old souls, empaths, highly sensitive people, intuitive feelers. We've got some extroverts, introverts, but we're all spiritual seekers, searching for spiritual answers to life's problems. But more importantly, we're training ourselves in the art and practice of creating spiritual solutions to life's problems. I'm T.S. Hall, the Stoic Medium, and I'm always here to answer your knock, to help you rediscover your spirit's intent, that reason you incarnated this lifetime, and to help you create a path that you can walk with purposeful intent. Again, welcome to Spirit360 Fellowship. We're so glad you found us, yet not at all surprised you did. Today's topic is habits for mastering your empathic powers. And our friend Andrew had been practicing for about a year, and as an empath and someone who's highly sensitive, sometimes things were going good and sometimes things were not. But he started to realize he had found a path of right action that was starting to get him results. So the first practice that was making the biggest difference is his stillness meditation practice. And this is a practice that quiets the thunder of your mind. And as he began to deepen this practice and consistently do the practice, he started to recognize the noise that was constantly clouding his judgment and his thoughts and what was going on in his head. It was a thunder that was always there. The practice was quieting in nature. And he realized that even though he had heard it many times, that it is the practice of meditation that is the practice. It's not getting anywhere perfectly. It's not doing anything perfectly. It's simply sitting down with an intention to quiet the mind, to find silence. And that's the practice. And whatever else happened was perfect and part of the practice. His mind truly was the salty little monkey that always was tossing crap at everything he thought and said and did. He was his own worst critic. And it was during these meditation practices that he started to see just how nasty he was to himself. Not a very nice person that he saw in the mirror every morning, according to that little voice in his head. But the journey that he was on was finally understood that he would never really arrive at any destination. He would simply continue the journey on this never-ending quest to be present, to train his mind to be quiet, receptive, and at this moment in time, aligned with his body and his spirit. And as far as practices go, for really empowering and mastering your psychic abilities and your empathic powers, meditation was it. The thing to remember as he was pondering his next steps into year number 2 was there was really no place to get and no place to hide. Because once you find a sense of presence and reconnect with the essence of who you are, you no longer feel compelled to hide. The second practice was his journaling practice. And as the year grew on, Andrew decided that his journaling practice was a light being shown in the abyss of darkness around him. And even though it was really hard for him to get started, as he reluctantly did his practice because he said he would, he started to spot different fears. And those fears started to cloud his ability to tap into his knowing. And as he started to spot these fears, he started to practice causation, the ability to bring about a result he wanted powerfully by effortlessly applying his conscious choices through his journaling. And he realized that he had heard many times, but finally understood that as he was writing, he was thinking. That a thinking process is empowered by your writing. You have to articulate certain things in a way that shows up in the real world on pen and paper that allowed him to really deepen his comprehension of the source of the thoughts he was having, and then think through them to see if whether they served him or not. At first, his journaling was very difficult. He wasn't really saying anything. He was dumping out a lot, but not really anything was being communicated. He had a lot of stuff in there from years and years of life. However, through the meditation practice, he started to quiet his mind, started to get a sense of the rationality and the reasoning behind the stuff he was writing. Eventually, he realized that these nothings that he was writing in the space right after he meditated started to become everything. He started to see his life mapped out before him and the history that was clouding that possible future. He was starting to find ways to think through from an intuitive perspective how he could accomplish what he felt so compelled and drawn to accomplish. And it's through this journaling process. First, a little bit of diary. Did my meditation, did this, just an accounting of what happened. And then he went into deeper and deeper types of meditation, more in a therapeutic nature, more in a creation and causation nature, that allowed him to start to recognize that the time he spent journaling was his best mirror as an empath. He started to recognize things on the paper that started to show up in his mind, influencing his decisions and his choices, that kept him from being present, connected with others in a way he preferred. So through his writing, he had experienced a transformation in beingness, being present, being aware, being at the source of his life. Next is being aware. So this practice is one of a profound connection to the reality of what's so. We all go through life and we think we know what's happening. And sometimes it's actually accurate. Most of the times it's not. So awareness is accepting instinct. Instinct is your survival mechanisms hardwired into you as a human being, an animal on this planet, and starting to practice knowing, connecting with that energetic sense of self, that energetic sense of the world, and those that we are on similar journeys with. So Andrew's dawning awareness realized that most of what he experienced was rampant delusion. And that delusion was everywhere, within him, within others, and within the very world he was walking. Everyone was walking around seeing what they thought they were seeing, not what was really there. And it was through the meditation practice, through the journaling practice, that he started to truly connect with this moment by moment experience of now, experiencing nothing new, with so little true that he was able to create an experience that is aligned with what his vision and view of the world was. And in this little moment of now, he started to realize that things, while they were chaotic, weren't so damn bad. The most important realization he had as he started to expand his awareness was that this was not his first rodeo. There was a familiarity of things that seemed like he had walked through many times before. And that sense of knowing, grounded at this moment in time, allowed him to start to recognize an energy that acted as his true north, his compass bearing towards a experience of his choosing. And just like a magnet is set up in a compass and it interacts with the magnetic fields of the earth and always pulls one end of the compass towards north, magnetic north, you have an energetic compass and awareness that when you allow yourself to dial into it and feel it and experience it and know it, will provide you a bearing of your magnetic and true spiritual north. Based on that, you can start the process from within to recognize your spirit's intent, that reason you incarnated, that, yeah, this ain't going to be so bad. I'm going to have some stuff to deal with, some challenges to deal with. But grounded at this moment in time, free from the delusions of what my outward senses say, Andrew was able to consciously create the next steps on his journey. And he started a process of learning to be true to himself. Not what everyone else and everything else in the world said that he had to do. Intimidating at first, certainly. But emancipation eventually. Freed from the delusions of the outward senses, grounded and connected in a namaste sense of energetic recognition of the other spirits and beings around him. Which led to another problem. These practices, these habits that he was doing over the previous year, they were essential because it's almost like you solve one problem and then another problem shows up. Some people get frustrated with that. Other people see it as a natural progression. So causing distraction and freeing up workability is a boundary. Now, here's the problem. When he first started his spiritual growth and development practices, he was in the firm belief that every boundary he needed was between him and others. That he had to stand up for himself. He had to be what he wanted to be, who he wanted to be. He had to fight for it. In actuality, as he started to quiet his mind and calm his emotions, he realized that most of his problems were self-sabotage. He was creating his own problems. Man, that was a rude day to wake up. He started to no longer plot revenge on that thing that happened in the third grade, or that thing that happened last week, or that person who cut him off in the line to his coffee store. He started to shift his self-talk and his thinking away from correcting problems to creating solutions. He started to be able to create visualizations of him experiencing the life he wanted at this moment in time and be present to that being possible and true. Andrew started to realize that his entire life, his biggest fear was being a pushover, being taken advantage of, that someone had to win and someone had to lose. And that's how he learned about life, and that this was required for him to be liked and accepted in the tribes who raised him. He saw the fallacy in that. That was something he did to survive that was optional, not mandatory. So he started to expand his awareness to noticing where he needed to throttle and manage and control his own thoughts and behaviors, to be aligned with the energies he felt, the beauty he experienced, the positivity that was his natural nature. And this, my friends, was his most difficult empathic lesson, sorting out his stuff from someone else's stuff, being able to be present to what's important to him, and including all the other people around him who had their own important thing that they were up to. And the one thing he took away from this boundary audit is that he no longer had to harm himself. Because too many times he did things to be safe, to be liked, to be accepted, which a day, a week, or a month later felt harmful, drained his energy, kept him from being present, and started to resent things that he had agreed to do simply because he felt he had to for some unconscious reason. But these boundaries, these promises, these agreements he made with himself, and honoring those, I will meditate, I will journal, I will be present to what I experience, both from a delusionary perspective of my outward senses and from an energetic experience of what is going on around me, allowed him to take a deep sigh of relief and not try so hard, costing him all of his energy, creating frustration, anxiety, and in some cases even panic. And the last practice, the last habit, was energy balancing. Some people said he had to protect his energy. Empaths have to protect their energy. But he realized his energy was fine. It didn't go anywhere because it was everywhere. It was everything. But he was always juggling all the stuff he had to deal with instead of finding a balance and a flow that allowed him to experience life here, now, at this moment, at this time. So he spotted himself every time he wanted to start to juggle things around. And he started to practicing a sense of balance that would allow him to flow through the ebbs and flows of energy, some of which harmonious, some of which not harmonious. So he started a lot of things, but he finished very few, which created a lot of incompletes that he was juggling. His needing to be agreeable was very costly to him because too many times he agreed to things he no longer was committed to, which created a frustration in him because he had all of this pile of stuff he was doing for others, which was not really aligned with what his highest and best good was, what his spirit's intent was, all to be agreeable and likable. The balancing between energy self and survival self is a fine art that you develop in the middle path experience during your spiritual growth and development practices. And this middle path allowed him from a neutral place to stop reacting to the world in a survival instinct to being able to start to experience the world from a flow and balance perspective. Allow him to go with the flow, to be true to himself, and allow himself to magnify his energy by not bleeding off any energy, dealing with stuff that he's not really wanting to be dealing with. So the fifth practice, the fifth habit, is learning how to balance and practice focus on what's aligned with you inside your awareness instead of just getting along and going along, because in the short term, it feels better. The overall essence of where Andrew found himself at the end of this first year of practices is he found himself with a set of habits and practices that, when consistently performed, allowed him to true up to his spirit's intent. Your spirit's intent is that reason you incarnated. It's that flame that draws you like a magnet in one direction or another, or draws you like a moth to one direction or another. It's that energy that flows through and among all of us, sometimes harmonious, sometimes not harmonious, but it allows you to connect with others on a very profound level. And once you are able to discern between your energy, other people's energy, then your spirit's intent takes a front seat in your awareness. And you learn to walk your path one step at a time, present at this moment, always knowing what your next step will be and where it will lead you, with virtually no surprises. And that, my friends, is a little slice of heaven that Andrew had experienced from 1 year of practicing his psychic and healing arts. What would year 2, 5, or 10 make available to him? He was slightly curious and somewhat awestruck. My highest blessings.